My dad drove me to Provo, dropped me off. I didn't have $5 in my pocket. I didn't have a credit card. I didn't have a car. I had a backpack.
So I'm here with one of my heroes, living heroes, Todd Pedersen.
That's nice of you, Casey.
And every time we kind of get the chance to do this, we did this a year ago. And
has it been that long?
Yeah, it's crazy, huh? Oh. And every time I get the chance, I take advantage of it. So some feedback for you. Your episode for sure was the most shared. Was it most shared? Most watched?
Both? That's it? Was there a third?
No, which is fascinating because we had an absolute amazing lineup. But I think there's something specific about your story and connecting with young people that are on they're trying to make it. They're like stepping into the arena and going that I think just resonates. And it did with me. And so excited to jump back in, go deeper on some of those subjects and just catch up. So
let's go.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So give me kind of Todd 2025.
Ooh, 25?
Yeah, I mean, what is life? We were just chatting it up. Like, what does life look like?
2025 is going to be disruptive to the Pedersen family. We have, as you know, we have two sons that race. One races in the United States in Porsches. Another one races go-karts with the aspiration of being a Formula One driver and has the talent to potentially get there. He just signed with a team in Italy to race full-time. Like when I say full-time, he might make it home twice next year for the whole year, and he's 14.
So he's going to be living there.
Living in Italy, racing all of Europe full-time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a minimum 3-year commitment. So we don't actually know what next year is going to look like yet, other than Andy and I will probably be over there 6 months of the year, a week there, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, a week here, back and forth, because we do have 5 children and we have a son getting married in May, which is going to be unbelievable.
But they're kind of like, it's what's insane to me. They're kind of leaving the nest a little bit.
Yeah.
You got Ella and Ava that are kind of
graduating.
Mm-hmm. Obviously you got, Sid's that, her and Ellie are doing great. And then you got Jake.
Grandchild.
Yeah.
That's happened since the last time we met.
That's insane. So Europe. And so like, I want to go back. I want to go back to like the origin of this.
Yeah.
Which is like, I think so much of your success, a lot of it comes down to you dream really big. I, love being around you because you're always just dreaming so big and you inspire other people to dream big. But like even on this, now it's so fun to see you channel that into your kids and saying, how big can you dream? Let's go. So talk to me about like, what's the origin of karting to, let's see if we can go Formula One.
I'm going to tell you, it's full push.
Yeah.
I mean, Dean at 14 has a full-time career. When I say full-time, it's 50 hours a week and he's 14. There's nothing else on his mind. I mean, in fact, we got home Saturday night from the UK. He went just to practice driving in the rain. It was 38 degrees, windy and raining like crazy. And that kid is on track all day, every day for 8 days. Freezing. I mean, I was freezing. But anyway, we get back and at like 5 a.m, my wife's like, and he had a buddy, Chico. You met Chico, his race buddy. She's like, I think I hear the boys go downstairs and they're watching freaking race videos. That's how in they are. I mean, it's so, if he's going to be that all in, I'm all in. My family's all in. And I think that kind of holds true for, whatever's happening. Like, it's not racing, but my oldest daughter, Sydney, had a baby. She's 11 months old. She's amazing. And Sydney, she's all in on being the best mother and wife. And it's like, it makes me so dang proud of her, how well she executes at that and does her best every single day. So it kind of depends on what kid's focused on which thing.
Yeah.
Jake is now almost exclusively focused on music. and he wants to be a producer and, all of the above inside of the music space.
I just go through this with your kids, and it was like, Elliot, he's in the industry we were in, he's in solar, and he's all, and they've thrived. They've done so well. It's so fun to watch them. But then you take Jake. Jake's into music, and so you guys are like, how can we help?
We're building. He's building a full on studio.
Berkeley School of Music, just kind of like, if you're gonna go. And it's fun to see it like physically, manifest in your kids, because that's what I experienced working with you, was like, one, you being all in, but then two, just like believing in us so much that we got that commitment. I remember, like, for me, 24 years old, I'm like Jake, or I'm like Dean. It was 50, 60, 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
And that was like the culture that you created. And I think it's a gift. I think it's like one of your gifts that you have to like inspire that in the people that you touch. And it's fun to see it in your family.
Thank you. The sad part is I was talking to someone randomly about school and education. I'm all about education. I mean, it doesn't have to be a certain way, a certain look, a certain feel, but obviously educating yourself, that's critically important. But our current education system, if you follow the system, it doesn't actually inspire, thinking really big and outside of the box and taking chances and, like really fully pursuing like dreams. I mean, Dean happens to be in the same school your children are in, Slope, which is completely different than a public school.
Which is so rad.
They're like, oh, you want to go become a race car driver and you're going to be on track 5 days a week, full time. Here's how your schoolwork's going to look, and here's the things you're going to focus on. Totally different than attract someone who's trying to become a doctor.
For sure.
And they support it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. But it does make me a little bit sad that that's not generally taught or even like
accepted.
Accepted. I was going to say allowed, but it's more like accepted.
Yeah.
Because it's too
allowed also. Yeah. It's like that there's a box that the system is trying to fit the masses in, and it doesn't do a great job. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that's the whole thesis behind Slope, behind the acting academies, is kind of this disruptive class where you kind of flip the class on its head, and like a lot of the learning is, happening outside of class, and the, going to class is kind of retooling to go learn, and which feels just like obvious when you hear it.
Look, this next year is going to be like a whole new experiment for my family. We don't know exactly how it's going to work, but we're just going to do all of it the best we can. I want to make sure all of my kids know, even though we're going to spend more time with Dean specifically, he is 14, so we don't want to leave him in Italy alone with, all the wines and cheeses.
But the family's kind of all about it though, right?
Oh yeah.
Like everybody's kind of like,
everyone loves the racing.
He's got his dream, and let's get behind his dream. And like, it's not like a bad thing to pop out to Europe and like
living right at Lake Garda. It's not a bad thing, but it is actually, I would say, scary. No, but it's like, it's new because I've never done it. I don't even actually know how it's going to work. But we're going to make it work, and we're going to make it special. And I'm super excited about it.
Yeah.
But in the same sense, I still have things I have to do here. I have roles and responsibilities here in the U.S., more specifically Utah, that I kind of have to do. It's like part of my job, so I've got to figure out some sort of balance.
We're neighbors. It's church on Sunday, and family rolls into church.
And we beat you.
You guys did beat us.
we were late, and you were later.
I am in the arena as well. But I like, that was like an interesting data point of like, okay, we've just got 3 hours of sleep flying in from the UK, and we're here, and we're physically here, and we're showing up. Like, talk to me about that. Like, why?
So, interestingly, last night, Sydney and Elliot brought up friends of theirs who are leaving the church, which I'm not, whatever denomination or thing you want to believe in. I just think that belief systems are really good. I'm not here to say which one you should be part of. And I just happen to be LDS, and that's what I believe in. It's what keeps me grounded. But And that probably is the point. I just said it. Like, you know, I got actually an hour and a half of sleep that night. Dean did not go to bed that night. And, you know, was I tired, like getting showered up and feeling groggy? Absolutely. But I knew that I should be there because I need that. I mean, I need some sort of guardrails in life.
Yeah.
I think everyone does. Some people think they shouldn't and they don't need them. They usually end up finding out over time that they could have used them and it would have been good. But part of it is like just being committed to something that is wholesome and teaches good values for myself and for my kids. And I hope, you know, if I ever run off the rails that you're going to slap me upside the face, because I think it's great. And I like having my kids kind of be part of some sort of a structure.
Yeah. I think for me, like, I love just observing, you know, I love just like observing behavior. And that was like I don't like going to church a lot of the time. You know, I'm tired or I'm fatigued or Chelsea's gone. And I'm like literally like packing up all the kids and getting them there and getting there late. But I value it a lot. Yeah. Like you know, sometimes I don't like it, but I definitely value it.
Well, by the way, I don't remember what her name was, but the wife that spoke about us being sheep, I was like, dang, man, it's so true. We are sheep. We're like little sheep. It was one of the coolest. Did you? I
think I was.
Were you asleep?
I just don't think I made it. I think she spoke before I got
there.
Before
you. Oh, you guys got there that late?
A little tardy.
It was I don't know. I got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
And then we got a lot out of post, just chatting with buddies and, you know, catching up with Ryan and Dave and yourself and stuff. So yeah, it's a good environment, good people.
Talk to me about the business front. So I have always admired how proactive you've been with investing so early, like from the very get-go, you know, and we could go into some stories, but so early, so disproportionate, always like going as deep as you can go, as early as you can go, and being really patient. Like, talk to me about like how that, maybe let's go back to the very beginning. Talk to me about first building in Rexburg. Let's go to this story, because I think that to today and filling in the gaps,
which is it's a good thing to talk about, because honestly, you know, back to religion, like I was not religious up until I was 18 years old. When I wasn't religious, I just didn't believe in God up to that point, but ended up, you know, kind of getting my life straightened out and ended up going on an LDS mission to the Dominican Republic. And Gary Sorensen, who's from your backyard, Hiram, Utah.
A wild man.
I mean, as atypical as you can get as a mission president. You know, cussed like a sailor, bloodshot eyes. I mean, he was, and he got every ounce of everything out of us every single day, because we chose to, not because he made us. But he's the one who started talking to me about like thinking a little bit bigger in life. Like I was going to be an orthodontist, I thought, which there's nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, it's a great, you know, career.
Yeah.
But he's like, hey, you know, do you like having an hourly job? And I'm like, oh, my dad doesn't have an hourly job. My dad was an orthodontist. He doesn't get paid hourly. He's like, yeah, he does. How much does he get paid if his hands aren't in someone's mouth? I'm like, well, because my dad would tell me on vacation, not only am I not making money, I'm spending, because if I don't have my hands in people's mouth, I'm not getting paid.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And he's like, you've got more, not that that's, you know, not a great career and whatever, but you've got more in you. You've got something different about you. And then he started talking to me about real estate. And well, he didn't start talking. He actually, we're driving to a zone conference. Yes, I was an AP. What? But anyway, just a little humble brag. But anyway, so he's like, "Oh, do you know how to count?" And I'm like, I mean, sort of. I mean, I did go to school in Idaho, so I didn't count that great, but didn't read that great either. But anyway, I'm like, yeah, I can count. He's like, open up that folder. So I opened this folder up, and there were 5 checks. One was like 96,000, 70 something thousand, like 50,000. One was 30. One was something in the teens, and added it up. And he goes, that's how much the Lord paid me to be on my mission this month. I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? he's like, oh, and he said, how much did you get paid? And I'm like, my parents gave me $200. He's like, so he started to educate me on cash flow and getting paid while you sleep, and kind of going for it in life. And he described to me he had a mason company. He was a bricklayer, and he's kept laying brick for all these rich guys pulling up in nice cars. And he was like, hold on a second, I'm laying brick on apartment complexes for these rich guys, and I'm broke for all intents and purposes. So he decided to build a 4-plex, and he built a 12-plex, and stretched every last ounce he had to get that, and then ended up owning a ton of real estate and retired at a super young age. So he's the one who taught me about that. It's my mission's the reason I learned about that, which is the reason I wanted to start a company to own real estate, to have cash flow, which I guess the result was that drive for something different and unique kind of allowed me to start my company.
How much do you think that leader at that time shaped the course of your life?
I'm going to say this because my parents my dad's has passed away, but they're as good a humans as ever lived on earth. I mean, talking about, principles and being kind and all of the things that are most important, that's where that came from my parents. Drive in business and not being afraid to swing hard, that came from my mission.
That was Gary.
I mean, it was 98%. And part of it was even though I was his missionary, we became best friends and super competitive. Because I was, before I left my mission, I'm like, I'm gonna retire before you retired at 42. I'm gonna retire at 30. And he's like, I'm smarter than you. You're an idiot. You can never, he talked to me like that. You could never do that. And so we had this competitive banter that always went back and forth. And, funny, through the years, I built some decent sized businesses, and he'd call. And it wasn't just about business. He's like, are you going to church? Are you doing this and that and the other? He always busting my chops. But he's like, this is not good enough. You have more in you than what you're doing. I'm like, dang, man, I'm doing pretty good. But he always, and in fact, he just texted me. Well, actually, no, I texted him first about 2 weeks ago. Just honestly, appreciation. Having him as an example in my life.
That's how many years now? 35 years? 38 years?
I'm 56. Is that... How many years is that?
37 years.
That's scary, but it's still, you can ask my wife. I still talk about my mission all the time.
Yeah.
Probably too much still, because it had that much of an impact on my life.
Impressionable.
Because it was the first time I would say, I'd done sports and you did sports and all that, but it was the first time I went so all in, so deep with every single thing that I had. I'd never experienced that before. And I'm like, this is kind of magical. Everything I didn't write home, which is bad because I didn't write my parents. I didn't even write once the last year of my mission because they didn't want to spend the time. I didn't take P days. I just worked. And it was invigorating. Going to bed so tired. I couldn't even, it hit the no, not pillow, whatever thing we laid on in the Dominican Republic. It was satisfying. It was
just captured all of you.
Oh, it was great. And I think I feel like I tried to do that in my career with Vivint and the people I was around, and the people I was around wanted to do the same, and it was contagious.
I think they wanted to do the same because you were doing it. I think it's a chicken and egg thing. When I go back to my career, because when you're talking about Gary, you have been that person for me, and I think about a time in your life, and I always go back to this Jeff Curl story. I've told you this a bunch of times, but he talks about this, even just sequence of when you're a kid, you take so much value from your parents.
Yeah.
And then you become a teenager and you want the opposite. You want to get out and you get a lot of your validation from your peers. But then there's this gap where it's not your parents, it's not your peers. And if you can have a person in that gap that believes in you and you start right. And I thank God all the time that I started early and I started right. Because if you have a different mentor, a different person that you're following, that's a way different track, And I look at your track But take that to real estate, because you get this, you've got Gary that's saying, I'm on my mission making $100,000
I'm on
this month.
Well, it was more than $100,000 a month.
And this is like,
that was back in 1988. Which was not that it's not a lot of money now, but it was a lot of money back then. To me, at least in my mind, it was like,
for sure.
I was like, dang, that's a lot of money. But,
so you come with this mentality that like, I need to own real estate and I need to own it early. And you got into it early, right?
Super early.
Yeah.
So first, the first thing I would make sure I say is one of the greatest blessings, and I may have said this before in the previous podcast, I don't know, but my parents like cut me loose right after my mission. Like when I say cut me loose, my dad drove me to Provo, dropped me off. I didn't have $5 in my pocket. Didn't have a credit card. I didn't have a car. I had a backpack. And they allowed me to have the chance to, there was no sinking because I had nothing to
Which is so hard to do as a parent.
Oh, I don't even know how they did.
Think about yourself today. Like, really hard. You know what I mean? Because you can help.
Yeah.
Really easy. Like you can,
it'd be hard.
If there's a gap, you can fill it almost effortlessly.
But it was probably, I would say, of all things gifted to me, that was the best of all things. And I know there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this. They have no financial help from parents and they didn't grow up with wealth and whatnot. And I say, that's the biggest blessing.
That's your advantage.
I tell my kids all the time they're disadvantaged for being part of my family because they've never wanted for food or clothing or, whatever, ever.
Yeah.
Not even a question of that. So they've got to find their drive and the way they've got to find their drive. And, to this point, my kids are doing pretty good. But anyway, so I came home from the mission. Like I had to, first of all, eat and pay rent. So that was primary. But second to that, the only thing I thought about getting up every day is I'm going to own real estate and have cash flow. So I don't have to live like this. I mean, I ate at this, when I was at BYU right after my mission, I ate at this little, it was like a gas station with no gas, convenience store.
Yeah.
They had 10-cent hot dogs. And I lived on those things because they were 10 cents. I could eat 3 or 4 of them, filled up, less than $1, good to go. And I lived like that. It's not even exaggeration. I didn't have any money.
Isn't that insane? Thinking back.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Like that, like
it was right. It was on the west side of BYU campus.
Yeah.
And I ate there 4 or 5 days a week. That's what I ate because that's all I could afford.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I ended up starting my company and I was so obsessed. I don't know if it's obsessed, but so focused on making the real estate thing happen. I lived on nothing. I mean, I lived on nothing, which is probably the problem most people that you and I invest in. The second they get a little bit of capital, it's the big house, big house.
It's almost like
big cars, leases. They spend that money up before it's even coming in the door. And they're not focused on what they need to be doing for the long term outside of what they're doing and maybe in their current business.
So I saw this quote by Charlie Munger, and he said, the first 100,000 is a bitch.
To save.
It's like so hard and you just have to do it.
Yeah.
You have to like do whatever it takes to get it and to get it working. And like, it's almost the hardest, because you're going from nothing to something, but like once you get it, it snowballs and the earlier you can get it, Yeah. And especially now, I mean, I don't have social media, but anyone that follows anyone in social media, I mean, there's a lot of people are drawn to a social media account where someone's like, bragging about their cars and their jet set lifestyle and what all that stuff, even though that person they're probably leased cars and chartered plane and, whatever, but they're drawn to it. And they think, well, I need to start spending it up now to experience that
or to show the perception of success and wealth, which has nothing to do with it. But for me, start my company year one, I made 80 grand, which doesn't sound like much, but it was me and 12 of my buddies knocking doors, selling pest control. And that was after taxes. I saved every penny of it. I bought a $3,500 clapped out Jeep, and the rest of it I saved, reinvested back into the company to grow the next year. The next year after taxes, I made 800 grand. It was 800 and something. And I had a line of credit with Terminex, but I needed more because I was going to grow faster, but I had 400,000 left over. And again, I could have bought a home. I could have bought a nice car. I could have bought a boat. I could have bought whatever I wanted. And I bought nothing. I still drove the same Jeep. My rent was $187 a month. I lived with 6 dudes in a 2-bedroom apartment. There's supposed to be 4 of us, but it was cheaper with 6. We just piled in. And I had money. But I was going to buy real estate. None of that, I didn't want any of that. I wanted what I wanted later in life when I was 56. That was my mentality, truthfully. Like, now Gary was 42 when I met him, but I wanted the capability at some point to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, whether it be vacation or acquisition of something or donating or contributing back into society. That was my drive. And so I took $400,000, drove up to, I didn't take the money, but went to Rexburg, Idaho. I was from Idaho Falls, and Rick's College was a school there. And I'm like, well, I'm going to own student housing because that's what Gary did. That was one of the things that he had done.
It was just copying him. It was saying, I run the same playbook.
I've never reinvented the wheel, man. I'm 100% fine. Like seeing someone do something and try to do it a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I go up there, and I don't remember his last name, but the real estate agent's name was Kevin. Took him up there, and we found a piece of ground right by campus. It was below campus, but north of Rick's College campus. And it was like about $400,000. So my intention was buy the land, and then the next year save up enough money to build a property. Yeah. I didn't know anything about financing. I didn't even have a credit card.
Yeah.
I didn't know about putting a mortgage. I was just going to pay cash for it because I didn't know better. And I would have done it too. But anyway, in the process, we hadn't made an offer on the land yet. But I was like, hey, we should go look at some of the complexes based on their layouts to see what might work on this property. And this is like one of those things where a lot of people will say it. Anyone that has had success in whatever it is, there's a lot of luck that comes into play. Like, we're not so good or so smart that everything we do is the success is the result of our efforts. And this was one of them. It was freezing cold, like November-ish, kind of a little earlier than now. We walked into this apartment complex. It was kind of older, but it was kind of cool. Split building, had a joint kind of activity center in the middle. And anyway, we're just poking around. And this old man, he was probably my age, but he looked like he was 95 to me because I was, 22, 23 years old. He's like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, oh, we're just look, I'm going to buy a piece of land and build an apartment complex. We're just looking at layouts. He's like, what do you mean you're going to buy land? You're too young. And I'm like, oh, I've saved some money from my business, and I'm going to buy this piece of land north of campus. He's like, don't buy a piece of land. I'm desperate. I need to sell this thing. Buy it from me. And I was like, what? Anyway, the realtor was like, this guy, he's homeless. Like, he doesn't own this place. He looked homeless. And me and you also, like, we're curious people, and we're willing to listen to just about anyone, which is kind of a gift because most people don't listen to anyone. And I was like, no, let's take him to lunch. We took him to JB's Big Boy. I still remember. And take him to lunch. And sure enough, he owns the property. And Kevin's like, hey, he does own it. Wow, this is crazy. So anyway, the guy's like, hey, I have to sell this thing, but I need it to close in 2 weeks. And he didn't say why, but he was like, this has to happen. I'll sell it to you for $2.2 million. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I don't know how much this thing's worth. I've never owned real estate. And I said, I have $400,000 of cash. That's all the money I have. Like, how am I going to buy it for $2.2 million? And he said, go get finance. I'm like, how? I didn't have a debt on a car. I'd never had debt in my life.
Yeah.
So anyway, just out of whatever curiosity, I'm like, well, Kevin, let's go find out how much he owes on this thing. No one even taught me that. It was just like,
it's intuitive.
Yeah. I'm like, well, let's find out what he owes. Then if he's desperate, let's offer him less. So he owed 378, maybe it's 387. It's been a long time. 370 something thousand bucks. That's what he owed. The debt holder was Gary Thomas in Idaho Falls. My neighbor and one of my dad's best friends. He was a doctor in town. And by the way, the only Mercedes in all of Idaho Falls. We'd look at that thing and we're like, that's a freaking Mercedes. I mean, it was pea green, super ugly, but it was still a Mercedes. So anyway, I called Gary up. I said, hey, can I come meet with you? And it's like 20 minutes away. I go to his home. He had work, went later in the evening. I said, hey, Gary, I want to buy this apartment complex in Rexburg, and you have the first note. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, I want to buy it. And he's like, do your parents know you're talking like this? I'm like, no, like what? He's like, you're not old enough to buy real estate. That is totally irresponsible. He's an educated man telling me it was irresponsible for me to invest capital in a cash flowing property. I'm like, I didn't know this at the time, but I'm like, this is so weird. He was literally mad at me for thinking about doing it. And he's like, absolutely not. I'm not going to switch the first mortgage to you. No, absolutely not. I'm like, well, but aren't you financing the building? And if it's worth 2.2 and the loan's only going to be like less than $400,000, it seems like that's not a problem, because if I default, like, you're going to have it back. So anyway, he said no. I went back again, and I hadn't told him at the time, but I had 400,000 saved. What are you talking about? How did you come up with 400,000? What are you doing? Do your parents know? And I'm like, no, like, I'm on my own, man. It's got to
be because you were a misfit growing up. He had to have like I remember you.
Rough around the edges was not the right way to describe it. He probably thought I stole the money.
It had to have been. I'm hearing this story. I'm like, it had like
selling drugs or you stole the money. One of the two.
Like in Logan, in a small town, like what you did before you were 17, like everybody knows.
You're branded. You're done. Yeah, it's over. Life's over. So anyway, I finally convinced him if I could get the guy to agree that he'd give me the first mortgage. And anyway, so I called the guy up and I offered him $787,000. So the first note plus my $400,000. And I told him I'd close Friday. It was like Tuesday. And he like cusses me out,
completely
USOB,
offended.
Blah, blah, blah. I'm never doing this. I said, well, this is all I can do, and I'll close this week. So if you don't want to do it, you have till noon tomorrow. And if you don't do it, I'm just going to buy that piece of land, which I thought that was what was going to happen. He calls me back an hour later and says, if you close this week, I'll do it. So, and again, this is like, I don't know. I think people like kind of go through life a lot of times not thinking or trying to discover much. I also had found out through just talking to people in Rexburg, which I learned from doing door-to-door sales, by the way, that the school had received that apartment complex from a lady who died in her will. They sold it to him for $500,000. So he bought it for $500,000. So I knew he was going to make a profit, and it was only a couple years earlier. So that's why I kind of came up with, he might do this because he's going to make a profit.
Yeah.
And I actually even told him that. I said, I know what you bought it for. You're going to make money. It's going to solve your problem. So anyway, I close, and literally all but $12,000 of my $400,000 went straight to the IRS. He owed the IRS money. So it was exactly the right amount of money, I spent the next 10 months, every dime of cash flow I had doing renovations in the property, which, was a couple $100,000, which to me was a lot of money. 10 months later, I got an offer for $3.1 million for the property and ended up selling it almost exactly a year later for $3.6 million. And that honestly,
was the start. That was the start.
That was the start. And and I've said this before, I say it all the time, I didn't buy a house. I didn't buy a new car. I still drove the same Jeep. I wasn't married yet. Still had the same roommates, same cost. I did give myself a salary at that point because I owned the company. $1,250 a month. And my company was making a lot of money. Every dollar back into the company.
You know what's wild?
Back into real estate.
I'm listening to these numbers and I'm putting these. So my start was almost the exact story. Different asset, but I came and worked for you and had 400 grand at the end of the summer.
Which is crazy.
And that
didn't you make like 580 or something the first year?
Yep. And had to clean up some messes from the previous, company I worked with, but I had 400 grand like post-tax to invest. And same thing, like my head, I was looking for opportunities. I was, scanning desperately to go invest. And I remember we went to the gym and you said, hey, Keith is going to sell some of his equity.
That's right. Yeah.
And it was same thing for me, like simple brain, no finance, anything, just a burning desire.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, can I buy it? And you're like, I don't know if they'd let you buy it or not. First I said, are you going to buy it? And you're like, I'm way too deep, which I didn't know what that meant either. But I was like, I think it was just asking, like I'm listening to your story and all. It was just being curious. It was just, most of it was like a desire. It was just this burning desire, and ended up, getting the go ahead. And then I'm like, how can I get deeper in this? Like, I know he's selling it, at a discount, significant discount. And so I went and talked to Keith about financing it, and the number he was going to finance it was expensive.
Yeah.
And then you end up financing it for me cheaper.
Yeah.
And I ended up borrowing 800 from you.
Yep.
400 myself. And it was about the same turn. I think I took 3.6 and rolled the next time and ended up being 25 or 30 million dollars. This 400 grand.
Which, by the way, speaks to like one, being willing to have delayed gratification, which, most of you, are they right there or are they right there? Wherever you are, you do not have that muscle in your bodies. Most of you don't. There might be a few of you, they just don't. But it's the best muscle you can possibly develop is delayed gratification. On the cars, on the homes, on all of it. Doesn't mean, maybe you have to live to the degree I did necessarily, but if you do, you're going to get ahead faster. But the fact that you were willing to do that instead of, you could have bought big house, you could have bought brand new car, you could have bought all those things.
I've thought about this a lot, and I've said, like, why was that? Why was I? It was desperation, desire. Like it was like desperate to invest. Like wanted it so bad for myself, for my future, and I'm trying to go back and like think, why was that? And I think part of it's just we didn't have anything growing up.
Yeah. And mine was, funny enough, like when my dad dropped me off in Provo, I had to live with my buddy Brent Bartholio and his wife Susan. They were in a 1-bedroom studio. I slept on their couch. He didn't want me there. She was so cool. She let me, but the first morning I woke up, I'm starving, and I didn't have any food, and I was going to get in their fridge, and they were still in bed doing whatever married couples do Saturday mornings. So I was like just super uncomfortable and, whatever. And they came out of their little room and they started making omelets. And I'm like,
starving.
I was raised in the way that I'm not going to ask for food.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I'd love to have an omelet. Oh my gosh. Susan, not Brent. He was a jerk, but a good buddy of mine still is. She's like, are you hungry? I'm like, yeah, I'm hungry. She's like, do you want cheese on? I'm like, what? Yes. I still remember the feeling of being like in it. I was like destitute. Obviously I had a, shelter, but I had nothing in life. And I still remember kind of how that felt. And thinking, if there's ever a point in time I want to be able to give back that same way. Like that was another driving factor because I had to live with them for a while. I had no money. I didn't have a car. I had to get a job. Had to save up money to just get a crappy vehicle that barely ran. But again, back to the blessing, biggest blessing ever. Because man, that I had this experience where I was at zero, at least financially at zero. I had a lot of skills and work ethic and all those things, but I think it's all of those events. And I talk about luck.
Yeah,
man, I was lucky enough to have all of that stuff happen to me. And it kind of shaped and formed the way I thought about life.
I did one of these with Andy Dent, and he kind of went through that same process. His family, moved out of their house, moved to Vegas, and he said he was a teenage kid, and like the ice cream truck comes by.
Yeah.
And all the kids go belling over there and grabbing their ice cream and eating their ice cream, and he's just sitting there going, like, I can't do that, and I'd really like to do that. And that burning, everybody else can do it, and it like seared inside of him. And he said to this day, he's an ultra successful guy, but like that
ice cream truck rolls around, he's like,
here's that music. Yeah. So you go do that.
Well, and I'm this is important to say, like, for whatever reason, because I made some good choices financially early on, I always had in my back pocket my real estate, even though Andy and I did not live on them. You know that when Andy and I got married, I think I boosted my salary to like $3,000 a month. And I didn't even start it. So that was it. We got married in 2004. In 2006, when I sold a little bit of equity, I at that point paying myself $60,000 a year.
But it was what did you take off the table the first go?
40 million, I think it was. Well, there was an earnout also.
Okay.
And didn't buy a house. I was still renting. You
you were how old?
How old was I in 06? Is that 20 years ago or
06?
I don't even, was that 20 years ago?
So you'd have been roughly late 30s.
Late 30s. Yeah. So, and still living in a rental.
So this is something that's fascinating. I think people look at Vivint and think, man, that's kind of an overnight success, or it felt quicker than it was. From start to finish, from day
almost
one.
30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
Man.
29. It was 29 years.
Like, I think that's the lie.
Yeah.
I think that's the lie that, the perception is that you can create it quick.
Yeah.
That, like, good things happen really fast.
That's just not the case. I mean, you look at any of the companies in the Valley that have actually had real great outcomes. I mean, Ryan Smith, he worked on the phones for me in college and had this little business in a room that he rented from us. We didn't know what it was, but he was doing something and called software. We're like, software? That sounds stupid. But go for it, And, it wasn't overnight. It was like, the hours he put in, we watched him do it.
He was grinding.
Grinding.
Yeah.
And also working an hourly job for like $6 an hour to pay his rent.
Yeah.
At the same time. So it just never is the case. And I will say that the people that think, and you and I both invest in companies, the people that think I'm going to build this for an outcome or a quick outcome, it usually fails. Not usually, it almost always fails because they make bad decisions. They cut corners. They instead of investing for the long term in their company and their people, it's like they're trying to get quick hits.
Yeah.
And they're also not super committed to the long term of what they're trying to do. And it just doesn't ever really go that well. And then you look at the businesses that have been around for years and years and years. They're slow and methodical. Doesn't mean that they didn't have their foot on the gas, of course. But it just doesn't, it never happens overnight. Everything takes years. You guys are building the firm and it's like, it's going to reveal itself in 20 years, what it actually is going to become, not next month.
I had that like the other day where I was like, we're 4 years in. It's a decade before you kind of like really have substance and, and we're in investing, and investing horizons are a decade.
Yeah.
And so like we've been deploying capital for 4 years, no exits.
Yeah.
Just deploying.
I have deals that I invested in that are, I have had partial exits, but 12 plus, probably more like 15 years.
But that was Vivint was
forever
supposed to be 5. It's 10, and that it kind of just is how it works.
The funny thing is though, like, you remember, when Vivint Solar was going to merge into Sunrun, we had some very, very upset people that they were blocked from being able to sell their stock.
I was one of them. Like,
very upset. You may have been one of them. I don't remember that. I remember some of the people. When I say upset, they were incensed.
I was incensed, but I was like,
and the stock's at like, 15, 16, $17 because it was trading up on the announcement. It was COVID, all the, again, back to the, luck thing. Like that was just we had a great company, but the valuation and how that thing, unrolled was a lot of luck and timing. But some people, you guys weren't, I couldn't sell. I was on the board and I was one of the founders. You guys couldn't sell. And the end result was $70 to $90 stock exit instead of $17, forced on us sort of, but sometimes the patience and the needing to or having to wait is the best medicine you can possibly get.
I think that's the hardest lesson.
Yeah.
I've seen you do this a bunch of times. Like, I remember that Mapleton project.
Forever.
Peak of the market, offer in hand.
Someone dies.
Crazy outcome, like a murder.
Forced on us.
Yeah. And
the outcome was...
you wait a decade, and it's a way better outcome than you ever could have kind of dreamed about. But it was kind of just, you got to pony up and go play the long game.
It's interesting. Like, and that really does play out in real estate. Like, I own a bunch of land in different areas, but very concentrated in Boise area. And, when interest rates went up, man, it looked like real estate was going to be kind of garbage for a long time. But me, one, I don't use debt to buy land, and I don't use debt to do infrastructure. And just kept plugging away while everyone stopped. Everybody stopped up there, new developments. And now I'm, one of the only games in town with real,
lots.
Yeah. I mean, I have not all finished, but I have, 900 lots up there and in process. And so I just stuck with it. I had the capital and patience and wasn't desperate to get in or get out or whatever. And it almost always holds true that if you're building a good company and you wait longer, outcomes going to be
for
higher.
You. It was hundreds of millions on solar, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah,
just riding it.
Yeah,
and that was a rough ride.
It was a rough ride. I mean, at one point, I think the stock value got down below where I actually personally exited. And funny, I was at it was a Vivint party, and interestingly, this is one of Jeff Mendez's friends from Alpine. A girl I knew in college. I'm really good. You know that little machine you put the 50 cents in and it grabs? I'm damn good at that. And I'd pulled like 3 out in a row, and not right in a row, but 10 tries 3, which is pretty good. That's good.
That's a good pop.
Hand-eye coordination. I should have been a surgeon. But anyway, so this lady comes up, and I remember, who she is. And she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We were at dinner the other night, and a group of us were talking, and we feel so bad that your stock's crushed." Of course, they're laughing. They're like, their stock went from this, and now it's only X.
Yeah.
And I think at the time, my portion of the stock was worth like 50 or 60 million. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it does suck. It's only worth 50 or 60 million, which I know in your book is like a 0, but it's still not bad. But, we just stayed patient, and we kept running a good business. David Bywater came in and
crushed it.
Just absolutely, operated the heck out of that business. And, the people that we had infused into the company were great and patient and, big outcome because of just waiting. And that's typically all it takes is being able to wait.
So many people that sold every dollar all along the way at the all-time low.
Our board of directors, every time their shares would vest,
sell
at $3, $4, $7, whatever, out. Every single last share, every single one of them. They were playing for their $250,000 salary a year, not the stock play. And had they just waited, as board members, tens and tens of millions of dollars. They didn't do that. And people that work there.
It's just this profound lesson of like, if I'm going back and like breaking down your story, and like you showed me your balance sheet and kind of where things are at today, but you go back 35 years ago. And I think like, if I'm like breaking this down to principles, it's like, number one, get really gritty.
Yeah.
And get those first dollars invested. Like eat ramen, eat hot dogs.
Yep.
Don't spend, do whatever you can do to get that first lump of capital.
Yeah.
And then put it to work. But you never stopped. It was get a lump, put it to work, get a lump, put it to work.
Yeah.
Like just planning a lot.
The interesting thing is I think back about, I had 2 things going on. I'm not including my family, which, my family's everything to me, but I had my company I was running, and then there was the capital that it kicked out that I could go put somewhere. Funny enough, I spent maybe 5% of my time on all of those other things, venture investing, real estate. I mean, I had people around me helping me do it, but I had kind of two buckets going. I had the golden goose, which was Vivint and Vivint Solar, which provided, capital and resources to do other things. And I think a lot of people, a lot of people have a golden goose. Maybe it's a high paying job or who knows what, but they spend all those golden eggs every single month or every single year, and they never amass any capital to kind of do what you did early on, what I did early on. It's hard to do. In fact, I was just with Solidarity today, and no names, because they didn't even say names to me. And I own a piece of equity in that business. And they said their biggest challenge right now are founders that have had exits spending all the money before they sell before the company's even sold, or putting investments in post sale, and they're like, "Oh crap, I need to liquidate everything." Well, the markets are way down.
Time,
but I'm building a cabin
today.
Yeah,
2 calls from people.
They want out,
need cash for go sell a deal that they've been in for 5 years.
Yeah,
it's probably worth 2.5 times.
But they need money
basis. Now. Can you give me? Yeah, sure.
Well, the old principle of buy high, sell low. It's the best investment principle you can get if you want to be broke. Buy high, sell low. Yeah. And it's like, that comes through desperation or over living or over leveraging or whatever that is. But, I think anyone that's listening to this, hopefully they're either people that are building a company, intend to build a company, or have jobs like, Elliot, my son-in-law, has, that is high paying.
Yep.
And, he's a perfect example, and he probably is one that would shock you that does this, but he and my daughter, it's every single month. They're like, "What deals are you doing? What's going on? How much can we put in?" We just did a debt deal, and what did they put into it? $600,000. I mean, he's 30, she's 26, and that's just one of the deals. Actually, they only gave me $500,000, and then 2 weeks later, they gave me another $100,000.
Just scrapping,
just everything. They're like, they're watching their cash flows and the exits they have coming, and payouts and bonuses from they work at Sunrun, and it's just they're actually living the exact same way I was. Yeah, they live in a nice home, and they do have,
but probably have like a better model than you. You were kind of like in the wilderness with a compass. You know what I mean? And there's actually like some really good templates of people who've done it. And I think that for me, ultimately, this podcast is that. It's how do you like actually capture, and when I'm thinking about yours, the stuff that just sticks out was you kept your burn low for a long time, which allowed you optionality, flexibility. Like you didn't get that high octane burn. And I think that kills everybody.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that is like the death knell.
If you're living off of principle of whatever capital you have, that's a bad place to be.
Yeah.
Now there are periods of time in our lives where we have a salary or an income, and you got to eat.
Yeah.
But the first thing you've got to go figure out is how can I, make my life self-sustainable as soon as possible, because, and I didn't say this, but I kind of started to. I think one of the big reasons that Vivint was able to go big is that I knew that I wasn't the burden. I never was a burden on the company financially, ever. There was never a month where I was like, I have so many debts and expenses, the company has to pay me, even at the expense of not paying people or fulfilling commitments. So I never burdened the company. And I also had the confidence that I could take some risks, big risks, and my family was still going to be fine because I had my real estate in my back pocket that would absolutely support our lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, those are things that I think people need to focus on pursuing as quickly as they can. But again, it's tough. I mean, we did this door-to-door thing forever, and most people, their first year, sometimes even 2 or 3, every dollar they make, it's not every dollar they make into investing, it's every dollar they make into spending.
The one that like hurts me at this point, like I'll get asked to go speak to these door-to-door groups.
Yeah.
And I'll walk in and every kid has $1,000 shoes on. It's like every kid in the room. And I'm just looking at that going,
Were you looking at mine being judgy?
Well, I'm not saying that I don't like those same shoes.
Yeah. No,
but the kid's 22.
Yeah.
And that's his first dollars.
Should have bought us a couple of stocks.
And I see it and it just hurts because I'm like, that's $1 million pair of shoes. That's not $1,000. That's $1 million pair of shoes.
100%.
40 years from now. Yeah. And like you have time on your side, but I think a lot of it is, one, it's really hard to delay gratification. And then two is not having the right models or templates.
Yeah.
I'm like, the delayed gratification, that's a choice that everybody has to go choose what they want to go do. But the template is when you can learn that template. And that was always something that I was so grateful for to have. The first company that I worked for, everybody was driving Ferrari, like that nice. And as a 22-year-old kid, my eyes were saucers. I was like, I could drive a car like that, and it was beyond that. They said, go finance one of those cars. Like you need to show up and like show that you're successful.
Yeah.
And so I go get a Range Rover and felt good. I'm driving around a nice car and
$900 a month payment.
Like, and they're paying it. So it's really a zero payment for me, a zero until it's not. And the company goes out of business. I still have the payment. And I remember like pulling up to Alex Dunn's house to go play basketball. And I've got this Range Rover 24-inch rims, no job. Like, and I'm like, who is the biggest idiot on earth? I think it's me. I think I'm, so that's like my first example of like what to do.
Yeah.
And then I show up and meet you guys and you're driving a 10-year-old truck at 40, 37, 38.
Yeah. My rent was $1,300 a month.
And I'm like, I know like you made $3.6 million when you were 23. That's 16, 17 years earlier. You had a big exit from selling a piece of the company, but there was some thing that
honestly, Casey,
was calling you.
I again, back to my Gary Sorensen. I just remember he still is a very arrogant man in a cool way. But I just remember him saying, I get paid when I sleep, when I vacation, when I hunt. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. And he wasn't just, he obviously just gave 3 years of his life.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just about, material things, but he could afford to say yes on 36 months of, not getting paid. And I just remember, two things, that, and then the other is that for, back to religion a little bit, like I feel like, everything that we have financially is definitely a result of work and effort and focus and whatnot, but also a gift that's come from above. I say luck. You can intertwine, luck and blessings and whatever. They're one and the same thing.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of felt like, hey, this isn't just mine.
It's a stewardship.
It's definitely a stewardship, and we better do good things. Now, that we have a lot of fun. We have nice things, and we have the ability to.
But I think that's the misunderstanding. Is I think if somebody looked at your life today and how you live, they would think that you're. I don't know if irresponsible is the wrong word, but you send it.
Oh.
But if they,
nothing's a no.
If they got behind the curtain, you would see that that's a tiny fraction of cash flow.
Oh yeah,
and that most of it is the exact same thing you were doing when you were 23 or 26 or 35.
Yeah,
most of it is rolling back into
one. I'm back to I don't live off the principle of
ever.
Yeah, I just don't do it. Now I invest principle. Of course, you have to do that, but day-to-day living. You know the plane I fly. It's $5 million a year to operate that thing.
Yeah.
If I was using principle from exits, that plane's getting sold pretty quick.
Yeah.
Not quick, but it just starts to eat itself up. So, my son's going to go race in Italy. We're going to rent or whatever there. Found the most insane home over Lake Garda.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, let's just buy it. Why am I going to rent? I'm just going to buy this thing.
Yeah.
So, it's because of decisions made early, And by the way, it wasn't just me. My wife was
no, and
100% on board.
That's another place I want to go with this, but I want to go to that second. Lived lean, invested early, stayed disciplined to live lean for a long time. Somehow along the way, you gave big all along the way. How do you balance those two? Because I think there's another side of it, which is like you can get there by being a miser.
Yeah.
And like grinding your people, grinding the waitress, like whatever it is to like keep as much. But that wasn't you. You actually you would spend a lot on other people that you wouldn't spend on yourself.
Yeah.
And that habit has persisted and actually grown in proportion to like your spending.
I mean, so back to, like me, just so, I mean, a lot of these people don't know me and some think they do, but I don't think I'm special. I just think I worked hard. I don't think I'm extra smart. I don't think I have an edge on anyone. I just, I stayed focused. And one thing I do see with a lot of younger people is every new shiny object they're chasing. New company, new this, new industry, new opportunity. They're chase, and they're not focused. You talked about Charlie Munger. Well, Berkshire Hathaway, their dividend off of Coca-Cola every quarter is more than their original investment in Coca-Cola every quarter. And their equity, I don't know, proportionally what it is, but it's just being patient. But anyway, I kind of look at, the blessing of financial, gain that definitely some came from me, from work. Others were gifts or luck sometimes. And so very, very early on with Andy and I, it was important. And we talked about this and we still talk about it. I want to give wherever we need to give, no matter where it is or when it is. I'm one that this isn't bragging because there's nothing to brag about, but if there's a homeless person, they're getting every dollar I have. And they're probably using it on things that I wouldn't use it on, but that's not my choice. So whenever it's there, like when I go to the gas station, I only carry hundreds. And I buy a drink and a donut, all the change is going. And it's not bragging. It's just like, my wife and I, for some reason, very early on, decided to give, sometimes till it hurt. In fact, our first major donation was IHC Hospital. It was $10 million. They only asked me for $1 million. They asked me for $1 million. I went to do the ribbon cutting. This is how cool my wife is. It was a long time ago. And so anyway, I'm driving. She's not going to go. And I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't know, doing a ribbon cutting for a new hospital. And she's like, "Oh, how much are we giving?" I said $1 million. She's like, $1 million? That's not very much money. You need to give them more. And I'm like what? And she said, "Well, how about 10 million?" I'm like, I mean, 10 million was a lot of money to me. It still is. It's a lot of money, but it was a lot of money to me back then. And I'm like, 10 million? She's like, "Yeah, like this is a great cause. Like, helping build a hospital and it's going to serve a lot of people." So anyway, I show up and literally I had to give some little speech. And I'm like, just so everyone knows, and Andy wasn't there. I'm like, I was driving here and told my wife we were donating $1 million and we were going to do the ribbon cutting and all this. And I was going to give this talk and she shamed me about how little it was. And so we're going to give 10 million. And that's just how my wife is. She's just like that. Gail, when she asked us for 25 million for the primary children's, my wife's like, we'd like to give 35. And I'm like, well, I mean, she's just like that.
Yo.
Whatever, if there's need, she's there.
But we could go, like, we laugh about this, but from the day that I've met you, Andy's had house plans.
Yeah, it's so
like
true.
Literally from the day. This is
multiple house plans.
She's gone through a lot, but there's been something along the way almost every time where you say $5 million for this house,
yeah, or
give it away,
yeah,
and you guys have just chose to give it away almost every time. Like,
well, funny enough, this is no joke. And I told Gail, we went to her, Gail Miller, we went to her whatever you call it. I say an apartment, but it's massive. It's amazing. Downtown Salt Lake. And we were literally just talking about buying a yacht. We were like we love yachting. We charter in process of,
finding one,
finding a yacht. And we went to this luncheon with, they had scones with forks and knives. I didn't know how, it was really awkward eating a scone with a fork and a knife. They break up and whatever, but I did my best. And, they started presenting the idea of this new primary children's hospital, state of the art, best hospital in the United States for children, because it was everything. And I said, hey, funny enough, we literally were just talking about buying a yacht after my wife, after like 2 minutes committed. And I said, this feels a lot better. This feels a lot better. It's a better use of capital to invest back into the community that like supported and took care of us all of these years.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and the reality is though, I would say, it would have been nice to have our own yacht instead of chartering a yacht. And I guess we could buy one now, but I think the happiness and the joy that it brought my wife and my kids, we're actually going tonight to Primary Children's we go every year and give blankets away and meet people. My son sings to them and stuff, but way better for the soul than sitting on a big yacht in the Mediterranean with a bunch of friends eating, caviar.
But was that taught to you? Did you have examples?
So I would say this, my dad was an orthodontist. He made good money, but my parents were overly generous with their time. Anyone that needed to sit down and talk to them or, getting a little guidance or counsel or service, my parents were all in all the time. So they didn't have the means to give, money.
Yeah.
But the truth is time's more valuable than money anyway. And so that's definitely where that
So it was modeled.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then, I think with Andy, it was like, my wife grew up in when I say trailer park, a single wide trailer in Alabama. And when I show people photos of how she grew, like pictures of her in front of the trailer, this wasn't manufactured housing trailer park. This is a trailer with wheels on it. That's how she grew up. And so I think Andy, especially is like, can't believe that we have the, abilities that we do to do what we want to do.
Yeah.
And she sees the value in making sure we share that with other people.
Yeah.
So that's, we have like most of our best family traditions are around being, giving and investing in other people. I mean, that's, I think what my kids probably cherish the most, not whatever trip we took, overseas or whatever. Not that they don't like those, but they're not the ones that like burn that, joy and happiness in your soul.
Yeah.
So,
talk to me about Andy. So we take kind of all these parallel investment track, giving track, build a business track. Talk to me about like you and Andy on that journey together and like what role she played, what role you played.
Well, so, and I've said this, and this is, sometimes people say it and they don't mean it, but like, and you've witnessed it. So I'm saying this and it. The overall of those years, not a single time, never, not once did my wife, Andy, ever complain about the number of hours I worked, ever. The amount of travel that I had, the amount of late nights. I mean, my home was open for business at 10 o'clock at night till 2 a.m, 3 a.m, 5 a.m, with you 7:30 in the morning and other people. And Andy would sit with me every single night, candles lit, treats out, and listen to the same thing because I was recruiting people or trying to help people see the vision of where we were trying to go or save people from bad choices, leaving to competitors that weren't going to take care of them.
Yeah.
Night in, night out, night in, night out. And at the end, and she was probably just playing me. She's like, that was amazing. You were so good tonight. I'm like, you've heard me say that. When I say thousands of times. She's like, I know, but tonight was really good. So except for one period of time in my life when I'd had that race accident, she actually was the opposite. She's like, you're not, she's amazing. You're not delivering. You need to figure this out emotionally and mentally and spiritually because your people deserve 100% of you, not the words, but everything, the passion, the belief. So there was a period of time for about 2 years where Andy was, she was riding me, and I thought she was being mean to me. It was the only time in our marriage I was like, oh my gosh, we're like not getting along, and she's really mean. But she wasn't mean. She loved me. And she honestly, she loved Vivint, and she loved the people at Vivint. And she's like, they deserve either quit or do it the right way. And I'm like, I have nothing inside. Like I'm empty right now. And she was so awesome to me that she didn't ever back off of me. And that was, so that wasn't a negative, as a positive. I just was sad at the time. And it felt like she was being, horrifically mean to me, but it was the opposite.
When I think about your journey, and I think about you and Andy, like, we just worked with hundreds of thousands of kids.
Yep.
And a lot of them young married couples. And like the same reason that somebody doesn't get wealthy because they go get a big lifestyle early, so many of those careers didn't develop because the husband and wife weren't on the same page.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's like these mismanaged expectations. There were so many times where, either the husband or the wife had an expectation of what life's supposed to be like.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how how they were raised. But you'd see, hey, if it's not a 9 to 5, we're out.
Yeah.
We want the nice house and
cars.
But I also, you can't work weekends.
Yeah.
You can't work Sunday, and definitely not after 6.
Yeah.
And I remember.
And that happens a lot. You and I both seen it.
No, and it's the difference in like potential.
But that you said, I probably didn't clarify enough. If I wasn't married to Andy, Vivint wouldn't have happened the way it happened.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. She was, I say was as if she's not here anymore, but she's so supportive of me that half of the reason I did what I did is I wanted to make my wife proud.
Yeah.
Every single day, I'm like, I just want her to be proud of me, which seems super random and weird. But
I remember I was up in Logan, and I was recruiting. And this was my second or third year, and like we went all in, and we're having success and had a lot of momentum. I remember Andy called me. Andy calls me. I'm like, and I think back about this now. I'm like, would Chels call somebody that I work with?
Yeah.
And Andy calls me up, and she just said, hey, I just thought about you and wanted to tell you that Todd thinks you're so awesome and that you're doing such a good job. And I don't know if he's told you, but I wanted to tell you how good. And I'm
she did that pretty frequently.
This
Casey.
is like a long time later. This is 16 years later. That meant a lot to me. And so if it happened to me,
she did it.
It happened to a lot of people.
She's
like that team,
she's a special person.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, like I don't know. I mean, every day I tell her, I can't even believe you married me and I have the opportunity to be married to you. Doesn't mean that we haven't, every marriage, we're married. And she went through depression, and I had my couple of years where it wasn't depression, but it's extreme sadness from that accident. And, but she's everything. I mean, she's just amazing and the best mom, and, loves people and doing right by people. And she's I needed her. You talk about luck again. I needed her in my life, and it was like handed to me. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Even the way we met. I mean, we were engaged in 5 weeks, married 3 months later.
Just knew.
It was just everything was just laid out for me. I knew the first night I went out with her. It was like it was gone. It was over. The only bummer about that is I'm definitely at a disadvantage in our relationship because I'm so whooped on her still after 30 years. It's actually not super fair.
Smitten.
I'm smitten, and it's not fair. I need to, if I could just even pretend to back it off a little bit, not chase her all the time.
You can't.
I can't help myself. It's horrible. It's truly horrible. I'm like a lap dog.
Wrap it up with this. You're still actively investing.
Oh yeah.
And you see a lot of companies. What are the yeses and what are the nos? Like when you're meeting the founding team, when you're thinking about when you're going, because your criteria is pretty quick. Me and you have done a couple recently, And it wasn't like a 10-day diligence.
Yeah.
It was like a 10-minute.
I mean,
like it was a pretty quick founder thesis.
Yeah.
You know,
it's really easy to overanalyze everything. You and I worked with people that were, I mean, MIT, Stanford, Harvard, whatever, from an IQ perspective, like clowned on us. But
horsepower.
There's something to be said about, intuition and gut based on experience. It's not all just intuition, but based on past experience and it's really about people. And you and I, you are still, and I was for years, I was in the people business. I wasn't in the smart home business. I wasn't in the solar business. I wasn't in the technology business. I was in the people business. And I got to interact with people all the time. And so when I'm meeting with someone Doug Barnett, I think I met with him for 10 minutes. He wanted $6 million to invest in his Remy. Another guy that I've known for a while. It was another kind of in that range business. I didn't do an analysis. I knew what he had done in the past, how he had executed on previous businesses. And it was like, it was yes. It always comes down to the people. The space they're in sometimes matters. A lot of times it doesn't to me. As long, if I think it's a good industry or good space, but it always comes down to that person that's leading the helm and the people they surround themselves with. There are a lot of businesses that I've been invested in that were in a great space, huge opportunity, and they got derailed. And a lot of times they get derailed because they get capital. They take money off the table. They build the house. They get distracted, and kind of everything falls apart. But you have those people that have this crazy, intense desire to succeed. And you see, up and down the corridor of, I-15, those particular companies, the founders and the people around them are relentlessly pursuing success. And most of them don't have, it's not a number. They're not chasing a number. They're chasing success, which is unattainable. Because that bar moves all the time. It did with me. And truthfully, why Andy called you, and she did call other people, she's like, you tell me how much you love all these people and you appreciate them and you couldn't do it without them, but you don't tell them enough. And you're always pushing so hard on everyone because the needle, the measurement always moved. We'd crush a year and I'm like, man, we weren't thinking big enough. We've got more in ourselves. We can do more. And so she was the balance of that. Hey, you've got to, not just show appreciation through pay and whatever. It's, also words. And she's always been better at that than me.
So these individuals, take Doug Barnett.
Yeah.
What does Doug Barnett have that you say he has this? Was it time he worked with him? He is
this aspirational a person and a big thinker, big believer in himself and whatever he's doing. And this is a super random reason why I invested. He started a company. What was the one with the groundhogs? It was
the hogs. Yeah.
The hogs.
It's kind of right.
Raised money.
Yeah.
$3 million ish. Started this company and NFTs kind of went bust for a while. And that company went away. They didn't keep making NFTs and gear and product and whatever. Doug and Reno Mendenhall form what is now Remy. And every single one of those investors in the groundhogs or hogs, whatever it was called, got their proportionate share of equity in the new firm.
Wow, that's
90% of why I invested. And by the way, I bought people out that were groundhogs investors, and they got a 20x. Was it a 20x return on their capital? 20x. He could have just everyone else would have shut it down, buried, shut down the org and the structure. And those people they lost. They lost. It didn't work. But the Woodleys, I think they put in $40,000 and they got $900,000 out.
It's incredible.
And they didn't care about $40,000.
Yeah.
But Doug, because Doug's Doug and we love Reno and he's a special human. Yes, I'm going to back those people.
Wow.
And I think that thing is going to be a massive company. I think it's
just took a big number from Pelion. You wrote a big number. Yeah, they kind of have Right team, big, relationship with Sunrun.
I mean, what they're trying to pursue is audacious. I mean, Doug, he wants to build a $100 billion company. I'm like, rock on, man. That sounds great. Let's go do this.
I'll give you one more and then we'll finish up. Ty and Tim, Ninja Kids.
Yeah.
That was one that, like, the second that you met them,
obvious,
said, yes, as much as I can get. How do we, what is it with those two?
Well, one, and a lot of this it's background on people. Like, I knew they were great people, hard workers. They had, like, their experience was exactly what they were intending to do, just enhanced. And so, there are a lot of people that try to do things or want to do things that's kind of outside of their field of expertise. That doesn't mean it won't ever happen, but one of the companies I just invested is a chip manufacturing business. The guy used to build hardware for Vivint, design something we thought was all at the innovation center, but he did a lot of the work on the background.
Yeah.
It was a no-brainer. I didn't even care. He was explaining the technologies and the chips and the multi-platform. I'm like, yeah, he's a successful person, and he always does what he says he's going to do. So it always comes down to that, and businesses will get derailed because of market conditions, the economy or whatever. But if people are absolutely focused on long-term success, which means they're making a lot of really small, good, best decisions possible, the outcome's going to be there at some point. Sometimes it's bigger, sometimes it's not, but it's always there with patience.
I'll give you one more. John Taylor, Ben, and Garth.
Yeah.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
It's a massive thumbs up, because now, look, and the Grit was great business. Kicked out a lot of cash flow, but the truth is they were sitting on an asset, and that asset's people, and their ability to lead and manage people and inspire people is really, really, really tough to recreate. Like, almost you see it once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
And they're in the people. They think they're in the pest control business. They're not. They're in the people business. So there's an opportunity for them to create a company worth hundreds of millions, if not billion plus. But it's because of their leadership capability. All they needed was a little redirection to create value, because they were creating value, but for everyone else.
Yeah.
Not that they didn't make money, but now
it's similar to your business for a long time.
It's the same. Yeah. Same. We could create a lot of business. We could, do it properly, with high growth. All they needed was to, figure out the operations side, which they're doing.
Yeah.
And retain those customers and that cash flow. And they go from a $20 million company to $200 million company in a couple of years. It's like, it's just magic.
Yeah.
So that's a yes.
Can't wait to fast forward 12 months.
Yeah.
And to see 2025 and the first year in Europe.
It's going to be
kind of all those things. So thanks for, carving out some time in the day and come and chat. And I love this stuff, and, love you. I'm grateful for
Thanks,
you.
Thanks, Casey. You're a stud.
And always, there's no one who's cheering for your wins, like the boss. We're always just.
You are. Casey, you're unique. And I think everyone that knows you knows this. You're very thoughtful, and you always include everyone in anything that you're going to do. And I think probably the best thing about you is, you know how to enjoy life. And I think a lot of people, and you don't have to be spending to enjoy, but you actually know how to enjoy life. It's like tomorrow's going to be a good day. And not just because we made a bunch of money tomorrow, but it's going to be a good day.
Yeah.
So, you're as good as it gets at that.
Your grandpa's story. I think about that. Kind of is it your grandpa, the one that just came in and say, I'm here?
Yeah. I mean,
and would just show up and just
lit a room up.
This optimism.
Had no money.
Yeah, but it was optimism. It was this positive expectancy.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this the other day about just I really do think pessimists get disproportionate credit, because it's easy to be a pessimist.
Yeah.
Oh, that won't work for these 5. And you sound smarter than to say I think it's going to work. Sometimes it sounds naive. It's you haven't, but I'm like, it's a different life, going through life with kind of a positive expectancy.
Is there's only 2 type of people like that. I think there are people who think they're neutral. The people that are negative and suck energy out of everyone in the room. None of them know it. They all think the opposite. They think they're the ones adding, but they're the ones detracting. You either add positive environment to whatever team you're on, company you're in, your marriage, or negative. It's really hard to be neutral. That's like a crazy lucky balance for a minute. And, whoever's listening, like, if you don't know which you are, you're probably negative. That doesn't mean you're always talking negatively, but you're not actually lifting the room up that you walk into. Like my grandpa, we walked into Smitty's Pancake House, and man, it was like the lights turned on when he came in. It's like, I'm here, everything's good. We're going to be good. These pancakes are going to be with the peanut butter on them and the syrup. I mean, he just had something about him that like everyone wanted to be around. Yeah. In fact, when he passed away, which was probably one of the hardest days of my life. Anyway, they did like a 2-day viewing, and Idaho Falls was like 38,000 people. There were like 5,000 people that came through over 2 days because they loved Eddie. Because he was so positive.
I've had this combo a bunch of times over the last year, and I think it's because of this and talking about the stuff that actually matters. But I think about this Tim McGraw song that came out this summer about a standing room only. Okay. I want to have I want to live a life where there's standing room only. I made such an impact on the.
Yeah, don't know the song, but how do I not know that song?
That's a good song. No, but that was the theme of the song is that, you die and it's standing room only at the funeral because, you made such an impact. And I think about these stories of these Eddies and these, you're going to be one of those guys. And we have those people in our life that you look at it and say, they gave so much of their heart for so long that you just move the world, and I think the same way that Gary believed in you and made that impact, yours is just multiplied for a lot of years. And I think that, that fires me up.
Thanks, Casey. I appreciate
doing that. So thanks, brother.
Okay. You're a stud.